Alright folks, let's just keep going here. Now, just as a quick note, I do have the quick start guide open. You guys should have this open if possible. Maybe put on a phone or a separate monitor. But the first thing I want to talk about is autosave, because I know it popped up when I was working earlier. I keep hitting F10 here because I use it for some stuff on my other screen, but it looks like it activates the window over here. No big deal. I'm just going to close world settings. You don't need that for now. But if you want to open up world settings, you can go into window and go into world settings. I typically always leave it open anyways. No big deal. I don't know why it opens and closes because it doesn't have a hotkey for it, but there might be something in here that shows what it's for. A bunch of new hotkeys that they added that I'm not too super plussed with, but no big deal. Let's just keep working. Let's talk about autosave. The bigger your project is, the more that you have on screen, the longer it's going to take for autosave to work. Unreal sets a very aggressive autosave. Let's go ahead and open up in the settings, and instead of going into project settings, let's actually go up here. It should be in editor preferences. There it is. So let's go ahead and go up here. It looks like they moved the editor preferences from in here to up here into the edit window. Go to editor preferences. Your editor preferences controls a lot about what you can do in terms of what the editor is doing. The editor is every project. The editor works under every project. Now if we type in the word autosave, so it should be under general, loading and saving. So if we go over here, I like to look for things over here as opposed to finding them. I wish there was an easier way for them to kind of do this. But as you can see, it asks for a lot of information here. The things that we want to pay attention to the most is down here under the autosave tab. We want to change these settings here. Frequency in minutes, interaction delay in seconds, and warning in seconds. I'll start with interaction delay. Interaction delay is how many seconds that your mouse can be still before the autosave can be triggered. So say for example, the engine will only attempt to autosave every 10 minutes. It will only attempt to check to see if it can autosave if your mouse has been sitting for 15 seconds or more. And you will get a 10-second warning before it autosaves. You will oftentimes see me swipe away the autosave because I'm busy working on something and I don't want to lose the 5 to 6 seconds it takes to autosave. It's slower or faster depending on your hard drive and speeds and whatnot. But for me, I'm not a huge fan of leaving it at the engine default. Personally, I will set the frequency of save in 30-minute intervals. I will leave the interaction delay, meaning how long my mouse has to be set, to about, say, 45 seconds. So if I'm leaving it sitting, actually that's a little bit too, how about 20 seconds there? And then my warning here will be 15 seconds. These are pretty good numbers to work with. This prevents the amount of time that you lose to autosaving. And if you want to reset these settings, you can reset to default by clicking the Reset to Default button. But just like everything else, once you set this, this is going to be set by default. So you don't have to save anything. We don't have to export it. We don't have to, if you set this at default, this sets the values in here permanently for the engine. I'm just going to leave this alone for now, and I'm just going to go ahead and close this up because we're done at this point. All right. Section 9 in the UE4 Beginner's Guide. Now, I like the UE4 Beginner's Guide because it's a really good way to get people started, especially for some of you guys who are who are new. I know some of you guys are not new to this, but under Section 9, Viewport Navigation, this is more or less how all this works. Right mouse button and moving the mouse around will let you look around. Sorry, I'm moving there a little bit. So right now I'm holding the right mouse button and I'm moving the mouse around. Holding the right mouse button and then using FPS controls, WASD, will allow you to fly around almost like you are in a no-clip mode. No clip, that's a term that I haven't heard in forever. WASD. Alright, I'm releasing all the buttons. I'm holding the left mouse button, and I'm moving the mouse. And this allows us to look left and right, but also truck the camera forward. Alright, the middle mouse button allows us to go up and down. I'm holding the middle mouse button now. Holding down the left mouse button and the right mouse button allows you to do the same as the middle mouse button. I personally don't like using the middle mouse button because it likes to roll on my mouse. I use a double click to do this up and down movement. If you hold the right mouse button and then press the letter Z, as in Z, this allows you to zoom. Now if you let go, it pops back, so it's not permanent. And if you hold C as in Carlos, name of my boss, you see that it zooms in and zooms out. Z, C. Cool. Now, you can also hold the right mouse button and press Q or E to move up or down. Now, typically speaking, let's say I'm going to have this object selected here. I'm going to press W. Excuse me. I'm going to press W to make sure that the move command is set. That's set up here, the top window, and I'll explain this in a sec. Move this over here just so I can look at it. If I lose it for whatever reason, pressing the F key will isolate it back to me. Now, as you can see, what if I want to go around on the other side? Well, that can be slightly annoying. If you hold down the Alt button and then left mouse button, and I'm holding down the right mouse button with that one to zoom out, you can use Maya controls, if you are familiar with Maya, to orbit an object. I'm holding down Alt right now and left mouse button, and Alt and right mouse button. F to center, right mouse button, Alt and right mouse button to zoom out on the object. I'm not holding any of the command buttons. Now I'm just going to zoom around and make sure that I'm in the right perspective. Oh, there's stuff under the map. That's good to know. What is this? Oh, it's my skylight. Why did they put it down there? It's weird. F, pay respects, and eventually you got to get used to it. That's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and change our viewport here. Go ahead and hit a perspective, and then let's go ahead and select top view mode. Now let's go ahead and zoom out with the mouse button, or you can zoom out with left mouse button and right mouse button. But let's talk about this real quick. If you're in the orthographic viewport, holding the right mouse button will move the background and will move the object. So it's almost like dragging around a blueprint on a table. Holding the left mouse button will allow us to marquee a selection. If you hold the left mouse button, sorry, I'm holding the wrong button, and the right mouse button at the same time, you'll also zoom in. The middle mouse button is a distance tool. This is in centimeters. Unreal by default is in centimeters. So on and so forth. This is an approximation, but this gives you a good idea of how large the space is. Let's go ahead and change the perspective back to perspective, or you can hit Alt-G. Alt-G is actually my favorite way to change things. Let's talk about object selection very quickly. Left click selects an object. Escape will deselect your object. Delete will delete an object. I'm going to Control Z to bring it back. Well, Control Z undoes, so. Holding Control and the left mouse button will allow us to select multiple objects, with the last object selected being the fulcrum for all the objects that are selected. Righto, righto. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. Let's go back into here. Now the reason why my machine is lagging is because I got so much stuff recording and capturing right now, so no big deal. Okay. Let's talk about movement, rotating, and scaling very quickly. To move an object that you've selected, you can use a hotkey W. By default, Q is very similar as in Maya. It'll allow you to select objects but not do anything with them. W will allow you to move objects on the axes that this is selected in. E will allow you to rotate objects. I'm going to Control Z that. And of course, if you're feeling spicy, you can rotate multiple times in multiple axes. And R will allow you to scale. You can scale in the upwards direction, and I'll talk about what upwards is, in the forwards direction, and in the sideways direction. I will typically refer to the upwards direction in UE4 and UE5, sorry, as Z. Z. Z is up in Unreal Engine. If we look at the little gizmo down here, the viewport allows us to see what direction our object is moving in. And in this particular case, Z is up. Forward is X. X is always this direction. So if you're ever lost, you see that the gizmo moves with our camera. Y is to our right, X is forward, and Z is up. That is pretty straightforward. That's all you need to know as far as moving objects. And it's pretty straightforward, right? If you don't see the gizmo, you may have accidentally pressed the G key. The G key turns on quote-unquote game mode that allows gizmos and things to be hidden from the view so you can take nicer screenshots. Hit G to turn it on. Let's see, what do I want to do here? Is there anything else that I want to cover about navigation and moving objects? Okay, maybe 2 axes will work. So I'm going to press W to have my object selected. You can move something in a double axis. So instead of moving in one direction or another, you can see I have my object selected. You can see that when I am mousing over the gizmo, I am able to see that it is both X and Z, or just Z. So we can move in 2 at the same time. Is there anything up that I want to? Oh, yes, that's right. So let's say we're over here, and we want to move the object over closer to this box. Well, I can do this, move the camera, this, move the camera, so on and so forth. Or we can do the Michelle Branch thing, the making my way downtown, etc., etc. If you hold the left click, you see movement here. But if you hold Shift, do you see how we follow the object with the camera? This is incredibly powerful when you are moving objects and trying to get them matched up to, say, a location. Because the camera will follow the object if you're holding down Shift. It's one of my favorite ways to move things. You can also move things with the buttons as well. So if you hold Control, this will move it along X. This is Control left mouse button. If you hold Control and then right mouse button, see the only axis that you can access. Even though I'm selecting this one, it doesn't let me move it up and down. This will move it along the y-axis. And if you hold Control and then left mouse button and right mouse button, that lets you move it vertically. So these are your axis locks. I don't really use it that way. I just try to be precise with my movements. And that's not a big deal, right? It usually works pretty okay. All right. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up the navigation, autosave, and the optimization section of this particular demo. So at this point, you should spend a few minutes or a few hours if you need to practicing how to move around the viewport. Spend some time in the templates. It doesn't have to be the first person template. Spend some time in the templates moving things around and getting used to navigating. Personally, I will navigate and move around and kind of figure out what I want to select. I'll hit F, and then I'll use Alt left mouse button to kind of figure out what I'm supposed to be looking at. Oops, wrong button. I should turn off my, I have a button that turns off the start button. So we can figure out what we want to look at. Press F, rotate around, zoom in and out, look at my object. Oh, I don't want to look at this object. I can look around this way. Okay, that's fine. I can hold both buttons and then travel this way, so on and so forth. Eventually, you just get comfortable with navigation, okay? So once you've learned how to navigate and once you feel comfortable, we're going to move to the next section of this project. And I'm going to talk about the viewport. I'm going to talk about the editor window. I'm going to talk about what we're seeing. And then I'm going to go ahead and talk about how you should build your homework for the weekend. I'll see you guys in the next video.